Inside you, there are two wolves. One wants to roll a fresh game of Civilization and get lost in a strange, alternate version of Earth with boundless secrets to discover. The other wants to play True Start Earth 7,000 more times. This wolf ate the other wolf. There's just one wolf. He's a university dropout who lives with his grandparents. Random versus pre-made maps is a really interesting game development choice that I don't think gets nearly enough attention. In the past, adding the option to randomly generate a map felt like the next logical step for many strategy franchises, similar to mod support or tools that let the player make their own map. So for example, Heroes of Might and Magic 2 didn't have random maps. Heroes 3 introduced that feature. Imperialism 2 similarly introduced a randomized world. But nowadays, to me it feels a bit like, outside of indie games at least, randomized or procedurally generated layouts have become less common. When they do exist, I feel like they're often limited, or just don't seem to have a lot of time invested into them. Random maps are not perfect for every game, but I love them to death, and I think we should be advocating for them. So let's get some examples down. I also want to go through the reasons for and against random maps when it comes to computer strategy games, and I've got some theories about why developers are neglecting such an important part of the games that they create. I think that the most fundamental trade-off here is quantity versus quality. Every inch of Skyrim was handcrafted, and it really feels like it. Every zone of the map offers something unique, and there's a reason for you to be there. The world around you has very high-quality design, but it is tiny. The whole map is smaller than Manhattan. Daggerfall, on the other hand, is bigger than New York State. It is thousands of times bigger. That means that the quality is worse, there's a lot of empty land and reused assets, but quantity has value too. The scale of Skyrim can feel wrong. The entire rebellion was fought between maybe 25 dudes. One arrow to the knee can be a crippling blow to a nation's military under these circumstances, and that just doesn't feel right. Skyrim is still the better game, of course. I'd say that any genre of game based around traditional narrative storytelling does better without a randomly generated world, while games based more around emergent narrative really benefit from randomized assets. That way you get more replayability. If the maps aren't random, to hold your interest after hundreds of hours, you either need an incredibly large amount of prepared content, or the randomness has to come from somewhere else. Europa Universalis is a great example of that. It's the same world every time, but it is massive, dozens of times bigger than a standard-sized game of Civ. And there's variation. Not an insane amount, but enough coming from random events and the behavior of rival nations. These are enough to guarantee a decent variety of geopolitical outcomes in the world around you, although France being a huge pain in the ass is an inevitability. And so EU4 has replayability. Something like Zelda is not the same. It does not have a random map, and it doesn't have much randomness coming from anywhere else. The end result is that a game like Link to the Past is an all-time great, but it can only be fun again once you forget where enough things are. Link to the Past randomizers make more interesting speedruns because for experienced players, they require more brain power, and not just rote memorization. The same idea applies in casual Zelda playthroughs if you've played the game enough. So these are the biggest factors that come into play when deciding on a random versus a pre-made map, but there are some smaller ones that have an effect too. With new IP, you can often get away with random map generation. It can even work for really plot-focused games like Alpha Centauri, but if your game is based on world history or a pre-existing IP like Warhammer Total War, you probably want to use that specific map. And obviously, some people like historical maps for role-playing, and to give their game an additional layer of meaning. My favorite maps for Heroes of Might and Magic 3 were the Europe map and the North America map for exactly that reason. Civ is an odd outlier here, being historical, but with most of the Earth maps being user-made. But players have been conditioned to expect randomness from the series, and frankly, the game mechanics do not translate well to a realistic map of Earth. The map is simultaneously too big, but also too crowded. Civs like the Aztecs and the Indians have too much good land, while the Ottomans and the Byzantines have to fight with each other over who's going to get the spot of their capital city. But people still love it, and that's partly because these pre-made maps provide predictability. With a random map, you could choose the Vikings and get a landlocked start. But with a True Start Earth map, you know you're going to be able to do Viking things. If you play as the Mongols, you know that you're going to have horses. And if you play as the Dutch, you know that you're going to get to roleplay as the colonials from All Tomorrows. On the other hand, random maps produce strange outcomes that a pre-made map would never give you. Odd landforms, unbalanced land, and just a general sense that you don't know what to expect. People have criticized EU4's Random New World feature for sometimes giving you 4 Newfoundland-sized islands and then an Arctic wasteland. I like that you don't know where the decent land is and how much of it that you will have. Although more options for generation are definitely appreciated, I like the Rise and Fall mod for Civilization 4 for letting you choose how Earth-like you want your world to be. So that's a sampling of some of the drawbacks and benefits of randomized maps. What should we be expecting from developers? It's tempting to say that they have 2 strong options and that we should really take things case by case depending on what's a better fit for the game. But I really think that they should do both. With the exception of indie games with a very limited budget, I really think that this is one of the better ways that strategy game developers can spend their money. Between the 2 options, good pre-made maps are likely what should be prioritized first. The developers of Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era articulated this pretty well in a devlog. I mentioned that map generators add replayability, and that's exactly what they noticed in their own franchise. 2 of the games in the series without a dedicated following, Heroes 4 and 6, did not come with a map generator. So, if the primary reason for having random maps is replayability, then it is acceptable if the map generator is limited at launch and gets improved later, assuming you have some good pre-made maps for the users to sink their teeth into. If you don't, your map generation had better be really good, and for Civ 7, that simply wasn't true. You could not even generate a large map. This was a case of mismanaged priorities. They had a bunch of specific ideas of what they wanted to do, like their distant lands system, and when the maps were interfering with their vision of what the game should be, they just gimped the map generation. They overestimated the importance of their own ideas, and underestimated the importance of having good and varied maps to play on. On the flip side, if the map generation is good on launch, there's a way for developers to cut corners with pre-made maps. If the map or level editor is good enough, then the community can come in and create amazing stuff. Most of the best True Start Earth maps from Civ that you played growing up were made by members of the community, not by the staff at Firaxis. But giving the right tools and resources is important. A lot of cool features from Ambinar are reworked content from the base game of EU4, like using great projects as a reward for Dwarven expeditions. To put everything together, I'd like to walk through a case study. Europa Universalis 4 is of course set on a real map of Earth, but they added in the option to randomly generate the new world. Everything between the Azores and the International Dateline are replaced with a random arrangement of land and sea tiles. So instead of having a bunch of ambitious Southern European men competing for islands in the Caribbean, instead they are fighting over my cock. I think that this is a really cool feature, and it allows for a lot of cool scenarios. In this playthrough as Brunswick, I didn't have the option of colonizing New Brunswick. But instead, I knew my New Brunswick run would run into a New Brunswick, so I persisted. Typically, the Pacific Ocean is really big, but Random New World can make it smaller, and so it's easier for Asian nations to colonize. In this game, I played as a steppe faction from Northeast Asia, and colonized the New World, because I guess one Bering Strait theory wasn't enough. In this other game, I played as Tondo and set my sights on a heroic quest at the end of their mission tree, finding the lost city of Winnipeg. Despite the myriad of possibilities, the feature was not well received, and I think that comes down to timing. EU4 came out in August of 2013, and the Conquest of Paradise DLC that included Random New World came out just 5 months later. EU4's base game had a ton of content and replayability, and people were not tired of it yet. If it had come out in 2020, I think the reception would have been a lot better. That's around the time that Ambinar started getting really popular, so I think by that point, people were ready to move on from the classic Earth map and try something new. Now, I don't mean to downplay the problems associated with this game mode. These are likely the primary reasons that it failed, and they have not been fixed. The generation relies on preset tiles, and so often the landforms just feel jumbled together and unnatural. There aren't that many seeds, so you'll start to see familiar landmasses. Remember that Tondo game from earlier with the cool-looking new world? Well, some islands are different, but it's the same continent structure as this world, posted by some guy on Reddit. Or this other guy on Reddit. Or this dude. Or this guy on YouTube. Or the EU4 wiki. How many people have played this map? You have these big clumps of bad terrain. The trade nodes are fucked. None of this stuff has been fixed, by the way, and the most embarrassing part is how poorly supported it is. If you're trying to load your game and you click the wrong autosave in the menu, it will not allow you to switch, and you have to go back to the previous screen. And we all know how painfully slow it is to navigate the main menu in EU4. So, a good map generator would have been well received. And I think the one that they gave us would have been good enough if it was released later in the game's life cycle. People would have been okay with the lower quality maps if it meant more variety and replayability, and they would have had the patience to push for improvements rather than giving up on it altogether. I know that we got Stellaris in 2016, but I really hope that Paradox hasn't taken the wrong lessons from this, and they continue to add randomized content into their games in the future. Overall, I get that this should be somewhat case by case, but there's a reason that often cult classics feature a random map generator. It is something that requires a decent upfront investment from the developers, and might not be fully appreciated immediately, but it pays off. I really think that we should push for its inclusion over graphics and honestly, even gameplay. My favorite game of all time is Civilization 3. I think it has good scenarios, but compared to newer titles, the main game is relatively light on content. Civs, buildings, wonders, and units. But the map generation is amazing, and I think that is what has made it age really well. We should be future-proofing our games. The map generation that they come with should be good. That's all for today. If you like my video essays comparing strategy games, check out this one here about plot and emergent narrative. It didn't do very well when I put it out, and the topic is probably a bit more dry, but it might scratch the same itch for you. Take care. Cheers.